Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Tuesday, March 19th, 2024, and today we are going to be talking about the 2024 Nevada Senate race and a new set of polls from Noble Predictive Insights here that shows Jackie Rosen, the Democrat, with the lead against both of her major Republican contenders. Starting off strong, Jackie Rosen was elected back in 2018 by a margin of roughly 5 points against Dean Heller, the former Republican senator from this state. At the time, he was the incumbent who was also elected in 2012 by a margin of 1.2%. And so in 2018, Jackie Rosen was facing pretty strong odds here that she might actually be able to win this race, but a lot of people were expecting her to lose. The polls in this state had indicated that Dean Heller had somehow been able to win over more independent voters and more moderate voters in this state, in a state that historically had been very, very competitive when it came down to Senate elections, governor elections, and of course, presidential elections. But then came Election Day, and Jackie Rosen ended up winning by 5 percentage points across the state of Nevada. And today, she's now faced up against two major Republican contenders, Sam Brown, who ran for Senate back in 2022 and lost the GOP primary. He's now the frontrunner in the Nevada Senate race, and Jim Marchant, who currently is running and formerly was the Republican candidate for Secretary of State in the state of Nevada back in 2022. And so right now, you have two major Republican contenders here on the side in the Nevada Senate race that are facing off against each other, but of course their clear goal here is to win this Senate race back for the GOP. Nevada is a race and a state that has always been so exceptionally competitive. In the last presidential election, voted for President Biden by 2.4%. 4 years prior, also 2.4%. And in 2012 actually went to Obama by 6.7%, but in years past has been getting a little bit more competitive and in some cases a little bit more in favor of the Republican Party. In 2022, Nevada flipped from blue to red in the governor's race, voting for Joe Lombardo by 1.5% against the incumbent Democratic governor, Steve Sisolak, who was first elected back in 2018. And so we've seen times in which Nevada has shifted over away from the Republican Party and also away from the Democratic Party, which is why this Senate race is of a unique point of interest. Because while there's a lot of conversation about what might be happening on the presidential race in Nevada, what might be happening on the presidential race outside of this region of the United States, what overall, matters to the United States Senate is the composition of Democrats and Republicans in all of these very, very competitive states. When we're taking a look at our Senate map here, Democrats are defending a lot of territory. I'm going to characterize all the states that Democrats currently hold because I think it will really just show exactly what Democrats are up against in this upcoming election cycle. When you're looking at a map like this one, you're seeing that the GOP really doesn't have that much red. And normally that would be a bad thing, but in this case, it's honestly very, very good. The reason why it's very, very good is because it means the Republicans simply aren't going to be fighting for as many states as Democrats are. West Virginia already is an automatic flip, given that the Democratic senator there, Joe Manchin, is retiring and the Republican governor is running for the Senate race. But besides that point, when you take a look across the country at the 50-50 map that is much more realistic and much more in line with what actually is happening across this country, you find that Democrats are really strapped for cash, resources, and overall just ability to maintain control of the U.S. Senate, given how many seats they are defending. Now, at a bare minimum, I personally expect Republicans to reach 50 seats and Democrats to reach 50 seats at a maximum, which means it would require a Joe Biden presidency in order for the Senate to maintain Democratic control. With that being said, Democrats also are at a disadvantage because this is their highest point that they could reach. States like Montana voted for Trump by 16 points in the last election. Ohio voted for Trump by 8 points in the last election. Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Arizona all went to Trump in the 2016 presidential election. And given where we are nationally, the expectation here and the assumption that should be made, or could be made, because I don't know if it should be given the data we have in these Senate races, but the assumption that could be made based on the resources that we're seeing, the polling numbers that we're seeing, the presidential indicators, is that Republicans are on track to win a significant number of Senate races this coming election cycle. But let's put that on a pause. The reason we put that on a pause is because Democrats are actually in a much better position than you otherwise might think. If we were just taking away from things on the presidential level, it'd be hands down, Republicans were maintaining or winning control of the U.S. Senate. There was no questions asked. This is a Senate map here that is so lopsided in favor of the GOP that it means that there really is no pathway forward for Democrats if Donald Trump is actually blowing out Joe Biden in every single way when it comes down to the presidential election. It would also mean that down-ballot races would be directly impacted by President Trump's performance, and I don't know if that's necessarily going to be the case. And my reason for that is because the numbers that we see in Nevada, for instance, that show Jackie Rosen ahead by 6 and 9 points are amongst the same polls that also show Donald Trump leading in the state of Nevada by roughly 5 points. When we dive deeper into some of these polls, we find that there's a lot of split-ticket voters, a lot more than we saw in 2020, and arguably a lot more than we saw in 2016. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that Democrats are running strong candidates, strong incumbents, popular ones at that, and Republicans are running lackluster candidates. Now, Sam Brown in Nevada is not necessarily a lackluster candidate, but Jackie Rosen certainly is a strong one. Her victory in 2018 shows it, her history in serving in electoral politics here, and I also will say, too, the 2024 race in Nevada could be very similar to the one we saw in 2022, when Democrats were able to narrowly, but still, narrowly hold on to their victory in the Nevada Senate race. 0.78% narrowly hold on to this seat against Adam Laxalt, but to be fair, the rest of the country was shifting significantly further to the right, at least on the national margin here. And so when I see these states, I can't help but realize that Democrats are genuinely doing very well in the Senate races here. They're leading in Montana, they're leading in Ohio, in Wisconsin, in Michigan, in Pennsylvania, in New Mexico, in Arizona. They're also now leading in Nevada. You're talking 8 swing and battleground states that Republicans have on their target list. The Republicans have been eyeing up since 2018. The Democrats are maintaining their leads because they have a strong candidate in Arizona. They have a strong candidate in Pennsylvania. They have a strong candidate in Wisconsin and Ohio, right? There's an open race, honestly, in Arizona and Michigan, but Democrats are likely to field strong candidates there. They already have in Arizona. Ruben Gallego will be a very strong contender. He's already served in the House delegation there. He knows electoral politics there. Elisa Slotkin on track to easily win that Senate primary in Michigan. She probably is going to go on to win that general election easily as well against Mike Rogers here. And so what you're finding is that all across the country, Democrats are fielding the strongest candidates, and Nevada is no different. With Jackie Rosen deciding to stay in the U.S. Senate, which should have been entirely expected, but in some cases, when the numbers don't look super strong, incumbents choose to retire. That's why Joe Manchin is on his way out. Jackie Rosen, very obviously, is not. And that's a good thing for Democrats here, because she's popular, because voters like her. And what we know about Nevada is that Democrats almost never lead in the polls across the state. Or if they do, it still underestimates Democratic support in Nevada. Nevada has consistently been the state that has almost always, I think without doubt, in the past 3 cycles, midterm and presidential, underestimated Democratic performance here. And for Jackie Rosen to be ahead by 4 on average and 7.5 on average, depending on who her opponent is in the Nevada Senate race, genuinely is a very good sign. Because let's take a look at what happened in 2022. Adam Laxalt was supposed to defeat Catherine Cortez Masto by 3.4%. In the final stretch of the campaign season, in all of the polls, except for one from USA Today and Suffolk University, which said Cortez Masto would win by 1. The Hill and Emerson College, Data for Progress, a Democratic firm, Insider Advantage, Trafalgar, another Republican firm here. All of them said Republicans were going to win. The average, Laxalt plus 3.4, Laxalt plus 5, Laxalt plus 6, Laxalt plus 2, Laxalt plus 5. What happened on Election Day? He lost by 0.78%. Now, obviously, it wasn't a blowout, and it wasn't as strong as her victory in 2016, which still was roughly 2.4%. But it was a victory regardless. Another 6-year term for the Democrats in the Nevada Senate. And what it meant here was that Democrats were not going to have to contest this race until 2028. And by that point, the demographics and the landscape might look entirely different. My point here, though, is not about what they're focused on in the future. It's about what happened in 2022 and a severe overestimation of Republican support in Nevada. It happened, and you see it, in 2020. Donald Trump was supposed to win by 1, according to Trafalgar, and by the end results here, won by roughly 2.4. The average was pretty strong, but I will say that there were certainly times in which it did underestimate Democratic support. Nevada never overestimates Democrats, and that's the consistent problem here for Republicans. Unlike states like Wisconsin in 2020, or Michigan or Pennsylvania, where there were significant overestimations in Democratic support, it was very similar to what we saw in 2016. For instance, Wisconsin said that Biden would win by 6.7. Michigan said by 4.2. Pennsylvania was actually pretty spot on, but you can see it in other states as well. The overestimation for Joe Biden was pretty apparent in 2020. Nevada was not such a case. Even in 2016, you can see here that the estimation, and I know this might be a surprise, but Donald Trump was supposed to win Nevada in 2016. He led Hillary Clinton by 0.8% on Election Day. CNN had Trump up by 6 points come November 3rd, come November 2016. And so you saw here is that Trump won by 0.8% according to the polls, ended up losing by 2.4%, which was then again this question of Hillary Clinton was overestimated in every single other election. I kid you not, every single other race, but not in the state of Nevada. You can even look back at 2012. The expectation here was that Barack Obama was supposed to win by 2.8%. He won by 6.7%. And more recently in 2018, the Senate race was supposed to be tied between Dean Heller and Jackie Rosen. Harris X and Trafalgar had Dean Heller up. The only one was Emerson that had Jackie Rosen up by 4. She won by 5. And so you can start to see here how Nevada, in every instance from 2012 onward, has underestimated Democratic support. And for Democrats to be leading here, according to Noble Predictive Insights, which is very, very strong at polling, Sunbelt, southwestern regions of the United States, like Arizona, like Nevada, like California, we look at this and say Democrats are in a strong position. Jackie Rosen specifically is in a strong position. And so when we look at the Senate map as well, we have to recognize, while this may have been a point of opportunity and still is in a way for the GOP, Nevada is not going in the direction that I think Republicans were hoping. When you take a look at what the numbers are on the presidential, you find here that overall, they should be better for Republicans in these down-ballot races here. I don't believe we've seen the release of the presidential race, but the point is that when we do see it get released, and there is another press release on it, Donald Trump leads Joe Biden by 5. And so you have an electorate here that is swinging quite significantly in favor of their incumbent Democratic senator. And I've seen a lot of conversation about these plurality margins. They're looking at the pluralities. They're looking at these numbers. Take a look at the polls back in 2022. And Nevada is a unique state in that it offers voters the opportunity to vote for none of the above. And so a lot of third-party candidates here that end up not coming to the ballot will end up having their voters vote for the none of the above spot. So plurality victories actually aren't too far off from reality in states like Nevada. Joe Biden won with a majority, but when you take a look at some other elections, right, Hillary Clinton was able to win with a plurality. In 2018, it was a majority, but narrowly, right? Around 5% of the electorate chose somebody who wasn't part of the top 2 candidates. That usually doesn't happen, especially in swing states where all the focus is on getting it to one side or the other. So I don't see these numbers being, in the low 40s or in some cases high 40s as necessarily bad indicators for the Democratic Party. It's very similar to what we've seen in years past, and it's a strong sign for Democrats and a strong start for them going into the Nevada Senate race, because it shows here that voters still like Jackie Rosen. They aren't willing to vote against her because they're voting against President Biden at the top of the ticket. It's unlike things we've seen in 2020 and 2016 where there wasn't much down-ballot cross-voting, where voters were pretty much aligned similarly on the presidential as they were on the Senate race. But given that this map now forces voters to make a decision between longtime incumbents, popular Democrats, popular Republicans in some instances, chances are a lot of these Democrats and Republicans are going to be outpacing their top ticket nominees in almost all of these battleground states. John Tester will outperform Biden. Sherrod Brown will outperform Biden. Jackie Rosen will outperform Biden. Ruben Gallego will outperform Biden. Tammy Baldwin will. Bob Casey will. Elisa Slotkin will. These swing states, you are going to see the Democratic nominees for Senate, which more often than not in presidential races rely on a presidential margin and coattails of a presidential victory to result, in Democratic victories in these down-ballot races. The reason why Democrats did so well in 2008 in the House elections here was because Barack Obama was able to win over many of these districts that went blue and allow Democrats the opportunity to do quite well. In the Senate races, too, you can see in 2008, Barack Obama ushered in a lot of these Democratic victories. Sure, popular Democratic incumbents won in states that Barack Obama did it, like Arizona, like Arkansas, like Louisiana, like West Virginia, like South Dakota, like Montana. But at the end of the day, these incumbents were accompanied by a very, very popular top-ticket Democrat who did bring them across the finish line in some of these battleground states, like Alaska, like Oregon, like Minnesota. And it gave Democrats the opportunity to have such an expansive majority that by the end of this Congress here, it was the first time Democrats had reached 60 seats when Arlen Specter switched from Republican to Democrat serving as the Pennsylvania U.S. Senator. And so this time around, everything is different. And honestly, these performances and strong performances by Democrats in the U.S. Senate could have up-ballot effects, meaning they benefit President Biden if more voters are getting out there to vote for Democrats on the House level, on the Senate level, and may have not been inclined to vote in the presidential, but when push came to shove, they end up voting for the Democrats voting for Biden, and that could be what honestly saves Biden in a lot of these states. I think the Biden campaign is very happy to see that Democrats are leading by 6 and 9 in Nevada, leading by 7 in Arizona, 7 in Wisconsin, right? 4 in Michigan, 9 in Pennsylvania, 4 or 5 points in Ohio, sometimes 2 to 9 points in Montana. These leads here are promising for President Biden and the Democratic Party as a whole, and it means that their performance in the Senate does have an impact on the other races, including the presidential. And so with these new polls out of the state of Nevada here, it tells us Democrats are in a lot better of a position than they otherwise might have thought. And I think Nevada is a unique point of interest just because of how competitive it has been, how historically it has underestimated Democrats. And right now, with these leads here, I think Democrats are in a pretty strong position to maintain it and move into November 2024 and win the general election with Jackie Rosen at the top of their ballot. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video you can watch, and then a playlist for my 2024 Senate election analysis videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all later today.